Welcome to my channel. This is Bruce the Boss, and today's topic is going to be apparently Aaron Rodgers, discount double check himself, is making headlines for the term "I've been immunized" and the play that people are putting on that. And he's also apparently caught COVID-19, which has gotten the media and particularly the sports media in a big frenzy. By the way, if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, go ahead and smash on that subscribe button. Your subscription goes a long way with allowing me to produce new and more content and videos. Also, don't forget to like this video, comment on this video, and if you are already subscribed, smash on that notification bell so you can get notified of my latest content. So, back to the story. So, I'm seeing the word, for instance, what happened with Aaron Rodgers. So, apparently he caught COVID-19, although famously, no one is talking about his health. So, when you test positive, that's really all it is, or how it can be, especially when it's absent of any mention of their medical condition, physical conditioning, hospitalization. It usually just means, and it's a quiet way of saying, mostly either mild, if not asymptomatic. They just had their blood work sent to a lab and it tested positive. But again, mild and or asymptomatic primarily. But they don't want to admit that. They just want to say positive cases to elicit the thought that, oh no, the worst case scenario. But I find it interesting that every mention of his COVID-19 status omits any condition, physical condition of Aaron Rodgers. But that does mean he's going to be out for the upcoming Sunday game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, a lot of people are in uproar about his use back in August press conference, I believe, when the question was asked, and he responded with,
"Are you vaccinated, and what's your stance on vaccinations?"
Yeah, I've been immunized.
Yeah, I'm immunized. And a lot of people are uproar that he lied, that he misled them, as if immunization only exists in the form of vaccinations. As if natural immunity, for instance, was somehow a myth or dirty word, despite the plethora of studies out there, including the biggest, most famous one out from Israel about maybe 10 weeks ago, 8 to 10 weeks ago. Biggest massive study of over 700,000 individuals there in Israel. And they separated them from categories of those who were fully vaccinated, 2 jabs of the Pfizer, 1 jab of the Pfizer, and then those who just never received any jabs whatsoever and yet still contracted the COVIDs. And that study showed that those who did not receive any jab whatsoever and had already recovered from COVID had 13 times stronger protection and or immunity and antibody protection than those who had 2 doses of the Moderna. Now, that's a much bigger sample than what CDC's recent study that they're trying to counter with, where they showed that maybe getting the jab showed stronger immunity than natural. But I saw their study, it only consisted of 7,000 individuals in order to prove their point. I'll take the study that has 700,000 over 7,000 any day as being more conclusive and or more widespread. But as if natural immunity and 120 years of known immunology is thrown out the window as it pertains to natural immunity. But apparently Aaron Rodgers had also been receiving some homeopathic treatment to increase his antibody levels in his body. He presented this evidence to the NFL in the hopes of getting an exemption to the jab. They looked at it and said, you know what? There's not enough documented evidence that this provides any protection. So they denied his exemption. So he's been considered or classified unvaxxed this whole time, despite the press conference, and people surprised now to the contrary. But what I would find interesting now, though, again, because they have been very big in omitting any health consequences and serious health conditions of Aaron Rodgers, this appears to be a test study. If it does turn out that his symptoms are asymptomatic and or at best mild, maybe even moderate, but no hospitalization, no serious illness, if he's physically doing just fine, then I think that should count as documented evidence that he had some levels of protection already due to the high levels of antibodies in his body to not prevent him from getting the virus, but at least from severe symptoms and or hospitalization and of course death. But another thing that perturbs me, and it's a shame because I love these ESPN analysts and or sports writers, whether it be Sarah Spain, I used to love Bomani Jones and Ian Rappaport, but they're all talking about, oh my God, he deceived these individuals, he did this and he did that. Were these proper protocols for someone who is unvaccinated? As if they're living in a completely separate reality, and in their reality, those who get jabbed cannot contract the virus whatsoever, as if those who get jabbed cannot spread the virus. And so they're allowed to do X, Y, and Z, in which case that's false. That is a complete lie. Yes, CDC Director Rochelle Walensky tried to push that back in March. That turned out to be misinformation, that if you got the jab, you were protected. You did not need to worry about the masking, social distancing. You couldn't get it. Well, that tune has since changed, and I've done a video on that where she literally came out on CNN quietly back in August and admitted, especially with this Delta variant, it does not protect against the spread whatsoever. You can still spread it, you can still get it. That is in correlation with all of the evidence that we're seeing popping around the world in highly vaccinated communities around the world, still seeing major outbreaks. In fact, outbreak levels higher than before there was even a jab available. I know we've talked about Israel and Singapore before. I'll mention this one case in a county in Ireland, which in this one county, they are 99.7% fully jabbed. And yet they're seeing the highest rate of infection of the virus anywhere around the world. 99.7% vaccinated, and yet they're seeing the highest rate of infection around the world. This is no longer the myth of a pandemic of the unvaxxed is a myth. You can still catch it, you can still spread it with it. So why are they getting upset about him doing X, Y, and Z as if X, Y, and Z couldn't still happen regardless? I mean, and we've seen many cases of those who got jabbed and still caught it. Whether it be the New York Yankees, Bill Maher, Melissa Joan Hart, and White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki recently, and also rest in peace, Colin Powell, the late Colin Powell. You can still catch it, you can still get it. So, and there was a CDC leak back in July, which supports all of this data now coming out and or evidence mounting of these outbreaks in highly vaxxed populations, that the viral load in those who are jabbed is the exact same as the viral load who are those who are unjabbed. So you can still get it, you'll still get the same viral load, you can still be just as infectious. The only thing the jab is supposed to do is, especially depending on your age and other comorbidities, help lower your chances of severe illness, hospitalization, and death. Which, by the way, again, if you are not one of those with those comorbidities and or at-risk groups, such as the elderly and or those who are obese and or overweight with hypertension, high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, COPD, your chances of severe symptoms and hospitalizations were already extremely low to begin with. But for those who don't fall into those healthy categories, but rather the more so unhealthy, not trying to read, and I love how the media will try to redefine the term healthy as someone who is overweight and or obese, but we can see through that. It's supposed to help then protect you from those more severe symptoms. So I don't see what the big deal is if he could have still caught it, whether or not he got jabbed or not. So I say back off Aaron Rodgers, because a lot of what you're saying just does not make sense. Again, immunity is not a cure, but there is more than one definition of immunity. It's not just simply someone who gets jabbed, but rather can also include someone who just has high levels of antibodies and or someone who has already had the virus, beat it. And again, they should have a higher level of protection, because the jab itself only introduces you to a weakened, dead version of the alpha and or beta version of one spike protein, to where someone who's already had it, beat the virus, has been exposed to all of the proteins. And now if you just have high levels of antibodies, then that should show as a good level of protection against severe symptoms. And I think that's the case with Aaron Rodgers. So he'll probably get the last laugh if it turns out that he's completely asymptomatic, and maybe the NFL should reconsider his exemption if he is in fact a documented case, whether or not if they want to consider him an anomaly or not. But that's how these breakthroughs get discovered and or other forms of treatment. So that's the video. I think there's a lot of misinformation going out there and a lot of public shaming, and individuals who are going out of their way to interfere with an individual's right to medical counsel and or relationship with them and their own healthcare physician and what works best for them. And so we need to strike back, and I say stand together, whether you've been jabbed or not. I think this is not a war against the jabbed versus unjabbed, but rather those who are trying to push a more tyrannical way of life and or interfere with the doctor-patient relationship for what works best for an individual and what they choose based upon their health and or condition and or information and research. This is Bruce the Boss. Again, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, comment on this video. I'm out. Discount double check. Peace.